Hello and welcome to HIMSS. I'm your host, Jonah Comstock. Today, I'm joined by Dr. Davin Lundquist, CMO, Chief Medical Officer at Augmedix. And we're going to talk a little bit about documentation and the burdens that it places on physicians, on other healthcare workers, and on patients. Before we go any further, I want to thank our sponsor, Medallia. This podcast is brought to you by Medallia, delivering the next generation of healthcare experiences, and you can learn more at medallia.com. We're also going to talk about Augmedix, Dr. Lundquist's company, and some of the things that they're working on to combat that issue. So welcome to the show, Davin.
Thanks. Happy to be here.
Tell us just a little bit about your background before we get started. What your clinical background and what you do, how you got involved with Augmedix.
So I'm a family physician by training. I still practice in the Southern California market, as a primary care doctor, and have also served on the health system side as a CMO. In that capacity, about 8 years ago, I came in contact with Augmedix, and it was one of the technology offerings and solutions that I was able to kind of help champion with my health system and get it up and running with some of our doctors and providers, as well as myself. So I've been a user for the last, 7.5, 8 years. And in the last couple of years, our health system, went through a big merger, and so there was an opportunity for me to kind of look at some different roles and had the opportunity to join Augmedix about 1.5 years ago as their first CMO. Still a user today when I am in the office seeing patients, which I do still a few days a week. And so happy to talk about my experience.
Awesome. Really cool to be able to be a user of your own product and be able to keep your finger on the pulse that way.
Yeah, definitely. It's helpful. I get to experience it, provide feedback to our team and our developers, and of how we can continue to make it better, and also just share my experience with others.
So set the stage a little bit for our conversation. Let's talk about the documentation burden. I know that it's somewhat of a result of the rapid adoption of EHRs. I know that it's a major contributor to burnout, but tell me your take on it and the story a little bit.
Yeah, I was just thinking as I was sharing my story that, I became a CMIO over 10 years ago. And at the time, I remember when I was offered that position, like I had never even heard of a CMIO before. It was kind of a new emerging executive role within health systems. And it was because of the EHR, right? This new technology was becoming prevalent and pervasive throughout healthcare. It was a necessary change that had to happen. But with it came, some unintended consequences, and the documentation burden was one of those things. I think prior to the EHR, most of us were on paper. We had come up with very quick, shorthanded ways to kind of capture, our notes, and it was very efficient at the time. And so, with the EMR, we definitely move forward, right? I mean, it's a great advantage to always have the medical record sort of at our fingertips, right? Back in the days of paper, I used to have like stacks of charts on my desk, as I was finishing up. And so if a patient called or something came up and you needed information out of that chart, where are you going to find it, right? If it's not in the file room and it's on someone's desk, I literally remember chart clerks walking through my office and like going one by one through each chart looking for a patient, right? And that's pretty inefficient system that we had. So I don't want to say that EMRs were a bad thing. They're great. They've made us much more efficient and effective and at what we do. But what also happened was it kind of turned doctors and nurses and medical assistants and all clinicians into data entry clerks to some extent.
Yeah, and I think everyone's had that experience as a patient of going into the doctor's office and the doctor is sitting in front of the computer the whole time, writing down, everything you say, maybe asking questions that they wouldn't otherwise ask because it's a field that needs to be filled in. And people complain that you lose that patient doctor sort of that touch and that,
Yeah.
positive interaction a little bit.
No, absolutely. And I think, that image of a doctor sort of with their back to the patient, typing, trying to type and talk. And like you said, they're following, prompts from the EMR rather than their kind of natural instincts as a clinician, right? That they were trained. And I've likened it sometimes to like distracted drivers. We know the hazards of distracted drivers, right? And I think equally, we don't want distracted doctors. We want them to be able to focus on that interaction, the human that's sitting across from them.
Yeah, I mean, not to belabor the point, but there were still medical records before electronic medical records. So doctors did still need to write things down and do that during the patient visit. So what is it about electronic records that really created a burden that wasn't there before?
Well, like you say, maybe it was more of it exaggerated it or highlighted it, to a greater extent. If you think about a patient encounter as a clinician, I'm interacting with another person, right? And they're coming to me with some vulnerability, a concern, right? They're worried. They're trying to tell a story like on the spot. They know they only have a few minutes. And so you really want to, maximize that interaction and be able to pay attention to the nuances and really focus on that patient. And then when you've concluded that interaction, both your conversation, your exam, your findings, your thought process, at some point you have to stop and translate that interaction and all of its complexity into a nicely summarized note, right? That's clear, concise, communicates accurately, like the essence of the visit for other providers, while simultaneously you got to take into account, okay, I got to use this for my reimbursement, right? Do I have all the elements to get paid? Is it also going to protect me in a legal way, right? So you've taken this really nice interaction and now you're like, okay, I have to capture it, in a note format. So that burden existed before, but I think now with the EMR and the way that we have to interact with the computer, it just made it that much harder and kind of magnified the burden of that task.
So you've gone a long time without talking about Augmedix, which I applaud you for. I must take some restraint. But tell me, how are you guys solving this problem, or how are you going about reducing some of the burden of documentation?
Yeah, well, if you think about, what are some of the ways that we could solve this problem, right, of documentation burden? And dictation was kind of the early solution, right? That's where the doctor would hold those little, recorders, and they would just word for word, say what they needed to say, and then someone would type it up. And then, from there we graduated on things like Dragon and some of the newer ones like Suki, where you basically type with your tongue, but it's done sort of in real time right in front of you. So there's not a delay. And then, people realize, well, even better would be a scribe, right? And so there were human scribes that started showing up, mostly in ERs to begin with. And I think this is a really important distinction, that people maybe don't always think about because they're not in this space like I am all the time. But, the difference between transcription, dictation, and scribing, right? So in the first scenario, the doctor still is doing the process of like translating that interaction into the word for word summary, like the doctor or provider is doing that, right?
You're just doing
you're just capturing. Yeah. And then the technology is just basically word for word capturing what the doctor's saying. With scribing, you have someone else who simultaneous to the interaction is actually creating that translation, right? So they're listening, and then they put it into the right medical context. They're not going to capture word for word as the patient tells you about their trip to wherever, right? or that they, there's some funny story about their cat, right? Or whatever that comes up sometimes because we're humans. So that doesn't get captured when you are actually summarizing a visit, right? And so you now have a third person who's able to do that in real time, simultaneous to the visit, right? So then the work is being completed, much quicker and more efficiently. So
Right.
with Augmedix, what we discovered is that by making the scribe or putting the scribe remote to the situation where they could be in kind of a fixed setting workstation, then we could start to empower them with technology, including artificial intelligence and other things that could make them more and more efficient and effective at doing what they do, as that technology grows and improves and gets better, right? And so that was kind of this big epiphany that the founders of Augmedix had, and kind of their vision for this model of remote scribes versus the human scribes, which had proved to be pretty effective, but had their limitations.
Right. And yeah, so let's talk about that mixing of humans and AI, and why we're always going to need humans, but also what can we do so that you don't have to hire a scribe for every doctor and double your workforce, right?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things, back in the day when I was a young CMIO and attending HIMSS and other conferences where new technologies were being promoted, was everybody had a great idea, and in a vacuum these things worked pretty well, right? But when you combine them with healthcare, it seemed like healthcare always won. These technologies, which had a lot of promise, not unlike the EMR, would struggle, right? Because healthcare is so complex, there's such nuance, and we're talking about people's lives, right? So you can't afford any kind of error, really, right, in this technology. And so what I really liked about Augmedix back in the day, early on, was that they weren't trying to do too much with the technology to begin with. They recognized that, hey, if we put a human in this mix, they can sort of clean it up, make sure that we are, integrating properly, putting it in the right place in the chart, double checking our errors and the quality and all of those things. And so that was the model to get going, right? But now, as technology has advanced, certainly with the advent and the progress that artificial intelligence is making in our world, we're excited now to begin to deploy that in a way that helps our scribes, right? So doing some of the burden of translating the text, capturing data, putting it together in the right places within the note. And so all of that technology is growing and developing, and is in what we call our note builder and our scribe cockpit.
Do the scribes, I'm just curious, do the scribes work in real time, or is it like the visit's recorded and then the scribe works off that recording?
We actually have two offerings. So we have a live service, which we sort of, consider like our VIP or, concierge-like service, because you have a scribe that's with you live all day, right? And you can interact with them. They're capturing notes in real time for you. But you just have the comfort of knowing that you can, clarify and talk to them. And as the technology has improved, what's happened is, as our scribes have gotten more efficient at the documentation, now they're starting to do more things, right? They can do more services for you. They can enter orders, and they can tee up, other things and capture, pre-visit planning type activities. And there's just a lot more that they're doing now in and around, the day. But if you have a live scribe, it's not like you can, force multiply. You kind of need that person with you all day. So it's kind of a one-to-one model. But we also have our notes service, which is delayed. It's asynchronous. So the notes will show up sometime later. I think right now with our, first release, we promise to have them the next morning for you. So you record each visit, both audio and video. You send that to our service. The service leverages we have much more opportunity to leverage AI in that scenario, right? Because it's not live. And so we kind of have the computer take a first pass at everything, and then our scribes can clean it up and it's obviously a much better ratio at that point and much more affordable. And it shows up the next morning.
With recording everyone's doctor visits, there's a security privacy nightmare, right? If that were to be hacked or leaked, my personal visit with my doctor. What do you guys do to kind of make sure that you're never in that position?
Well, we benefited from working with some large health systems very early on. And so, we started out using Google Glass. So Google Glass, for those that aren't familiar or remember what that was, it's it's like a smartphone that you wear, like a pair of glasses. So it has an audio video camera and a little heads up display. And so, it leverages, Google's operating system. And so we were able to work very closely with security and data privacy, and we locked that down. There's no other applications on it. We have incredible security end to end, a direct connection with just your scribe. So for the live service, we remain in sort of this like live streaming mode so there's no risk of like recording leaks, right? And then as we evolved, we brought in a smartphone. A lot of our providers have now kind of gravitated to that. There is still a Google Glass available. I'm on version 3 now, and it's amazing. But we also have a smartphone that can do the same thing, leverage audio and video, and that's the one we primarily use for the recordings. And so again, these devices are locked down. There's no other apps on it. You're not able to surf the net on these devices. Every health system has the opportunity to, go through the specs. We put everything up to whatever specs they have. The recordings are not kept indefinitely. They're just kept long enough to get the note prepared, and then we delete them. And we have every possible, secure, compliant, thing in place. Even our scribes on the other end are in like lockdown facilities. They can't bring their personal, devices into when they're in, doing their functions. And we feel very comfortable and confident with the model that we have.
So let's talk about the patient experience a little bit. I imagine patient comfort levels are going to be different when they're told that, that there's someone remote watching them, or that they're going to be recorded for doctor's notes later. And I know it's funny because, even like, that the personal relationship you have with your doctor, where, you're going to show them something, some part of yourself that makes you uncomfortable to share. And then, knowing that somebody else might see that too. How do you deal with that aspect, or what have you found that it is an issue, or even?
Yeah, it's a great question. And obviously we think that's very important, to our success, is for people to feel comfortable, right? With this technology. So, back in the early days, when, I would come in with Google Glass and people were kind of fascinated with it. They didn't know what it was. There was, some concern about that, but, quickly we would describe how secure everything was, that, these recordings are not going to get out into the world. And ironically, over time, like, patients don't even ask anymore. And, I think actually, when I first went live, we actually had some of the future remote scribes were actually in my office, kind of learning the workflow and kind of making sure they understood how to do my notes. So they were like in person, and they were in the exam room with me. Right. And I remember that experience because there's someone sitting there with a laptop, like hacking away at their keyboard, and it was actually kind of distracting for both me and the patient to have someone else in the room. Right. And so for some of those patients that got to experience that versus when we went remote, they were like, oh yeah, much better, right? Because even though they still knew that there was somebody kind of watching and listening, it was seamless to them. They didn't really notice it. The hard, there's lots of computers in the room. People are used to their phones now. So it didn't really become an issue. We actually opt in everybody. Every patient gets the chance to opt in, and we get information, they sign a consent. And the refusal rate is less than 1%, probably less than 0.5% of people that actually, don't want us to use that service. So, and again, over the last year and a half, I mean, things have really changed, right, from a technology standpoint. And, at one point, more than half my visits were over video into people's homes, right? So I think people are just getting more and more comfortable with technology, and that it is okay, it's safe. But we've been there for a while already.
And I didn't ask about this, but I imagine another advantage of having the scribe be remote is that you can pretty seamlessly apply this to a telehealth visit as well as an in-person visit, right?
Yes, there's a lot of flexibility with what you can do, right? You can control the audio and the video on the device. So, if it's a sensitive exam, and you want to turn off the video, but the scribe can still hear it. If I'm going from an exam room to my desk where I'm going to do a video visit, then I can just put the device in front of my computer, and they can see that. And so it's seamless, right? And it doesn't require any extra integration or anything for that to happen. So yeah, it's very flexible. At one point I was even able to take it home when I was, when we were sort of forced to work from home for a while. And it's securely connected to my Wi-Fi and maintained all of its security, and I was able to benefit from the service even in that setting.
And tell me about kind of the future for you guys. How big of an impact do you think you can make? Do you hope this will become kind of the standard of care across the industry?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we would love that, right? We would love to be at the fingertips of every doctor, for every patient interaction. For me personally, and for all of our users, we've heard great feedback in terms of, how much it improves their life, their quality of life, saving them up to 2 hours a day in some cases of documentation time, that they used to have. We sometimes refer to it as pajama time. But the patients as well, right? We hear about the patients and how appreciative they are that their doctor can now look them in the eye and like have that conversation, and they don't have to turn their back, during the visit. So we think that there's still a huge opportunity. We've had tremendous growth. It's been our best year of growth so far, and I think there's plenty of room to capture a lot more physicians with this technology. And I think what's exciting to me is as the artificial intelligence and our note builder tools and our technology gets better, like we're getting more and more efficient, which again should open up the service to be more cost effective, and hopefully more available to more and more people.
Well, that sounds really, really interesting. And, I covered you guys when I was a journalist at Moby Health News. And it was in the early days, like you said, of Google Glass. And so there was this perception, this is a Google Glass company that's come in and, they're just trying to find a use case for a technology, which, as you know, is always the backwards way of doing it. But it's nice to understand you guys so much better now that it's not about the Google Glass. That's just one enabler of many. It's about, tackling this documentation problem by creating this human scribe empowered by whatever technology you can muster to empower them.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think because of the way that we've set up the model, right, where we have scribes who are sort of situated, they're in a very stable situation, right? We can identify places throughout the world where we can sort of match supply and demand, right? So we've gone overseas and other places to where there's a tremendous supply of people who have the capabilities and the skills and the desire to make scribing more of a career. And so that has allowed us to scale, much better than the human scribe model, where, you're trying to get like a pre-med student, or in a college town, someone who's, it's a temporary thing. And so there's a lot of turnover and people calling out sick that you have to deal with. Whereas with our model, we're very, excited about like our reliability rates and, how very low downtime we have because of this scalable model that builds in redundancy and really creates a stable situation.
By the way, I imagine that it's not just an improvement in a patient and clinician experience, but also probably better records, right? Since when the doctor is trying to take their notes and do a visit and everything all at once, they're more likely to make mistakes. Do you have any data on that? Does it improve the accuracy or anything?
Yeah, we do. Absolutely. Thank you for asking that. I love that our notes, are of a higher quality, right? And you can imagine, at the end of a day, someone trying to remember an encounter from the morning and then, sort of recreating that note right at that time versus somebody else who's listening, who's capturing it in real time, all the details of that visit that are pertinent, right? So absolutely, what we hear from our doctors and from our health systems is that the notes are more accurate, they pass more audits, it's easier for doctors to actually bill for the work that they did, because we know in healthcare, you can't bill for what you did, you can bill for what you document that you did. And so, the fact that it's an accurate representation of the work that was done allows people to confidently, submit the reimbursement that they're due, which makes health systems happy, right? Because then everything matches up. We've even explored arrangements with some malpractice carriers who have been interested in actually partnering with us because they believe that having our solution in place will actually decrease claims or at least improve the ability to just get an accurate, representation quickly, and accurately.
Really, really interesting stuff. Any final thoughts before we wrap up?
Well, I just want to say that, I've been involved with a lot of different technologies and, but, this particular solution, and which is why I joined Augmedix, is I really believe in the positive impact, right, that it has. And I think that, in medicine, it's not just about, the algorithm or the evidence-based medicine, or, it's really, as a physician, you have to bring it all together, right? The science, the data, the technology, the tools, but also the art, right? The art of medicine and your ability to really be in tune with your patients. And so I love that our solution helps our doctors get back to being doctors again. And patients feel like they're at the center and that they're getting our undivided attention.
And just before we go, thank you one more time to our sponsor, Medallia, delivering the next generation of healthcare experiences. You can check out more about them at medallia.com. Awesome. Thanks so much, Dr. Davin Lundquist from Augmedix as Chief Medical Officer. Thank you so much for joining us on HIMSS. As always, thank you all for listening. Check out our show notes for some links to some coverage we've done around this issue and around Augmedix. And until next time, keep being healthcare changemakers.